Hello, everyone. Hello to our audience here, as well as to our folks who are online. Welcome to the Ventura County Community College District Chief of Police Public Forum. Before us today, we have one of our candidates, Rob Davidson. And so we're going to get right into it. And we're going to start with the first question, which really gets us the opportunity to get to know you a little bit. So please tell us how your educational background, experience, and qualifications have prepared you to serve as Chief of Police for the Ventura County Community College District.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I've had a diverse background, most all of it in Ventura County. Starting with my education, I have a master's degree in leadership with an emphasis in public policy from the University of Southern California, a bachelor's degree. I do have my management certificate, and I'm a graduate of Command College. So we can kind of get those kind of things checked off the list. I bring those experiences and that perspective with me. My experience, I worked for 32 years for the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, rose through the ranks literally from dispatcher to assistant sheriff. In that time, I worked patrol, I worked investigations, homicides, written wiretaps, done all the things that you do in a rich and exciting law enforcement career. I ended my career in management, where I ran at one point internal affairs, the academy, and our support services division, and then ended my career running detention services as an assistant sheriff. And that experience gave me broad experiences with budgeting. It's our largest division, $120 million budget, 500 employees, and I was the executive giving the overall direction to that part of the organization. So I bring with me a host of experiences in the internal affairs realm, in investigations. So I understand the importance of quality police work, and also working with the community so that the quality of that is obviously benefits from a helpful and cooperative public. And overall, I've had experiences, as I said, that have really kind of shaped me. I've worked with underserved parts of our community, with the El Rio Lions Club when I was a deputy. I worked with that community to help do some really exciting things within the community to address issues of gang violence, of blight within the community. So I understand outreach, and I understand the importance of police work isn't just putting handcuffs on people. It's making connections, it's helping communities to rise up, and really being a force to help leverage that. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I bring. I'm sure we'll touch on those things as we go through other questions, and I'm excited to be here, so thank you.
Thank you, Rob. What is your leadership philosophy, and can you provide a specific example of how you've demonstrated effective leadership?
Absolutely. Law enforcement's sort of a perfect environment for situational leadership. As an interim chief, former chief, so the multiple chief and now assistant sheriff, we understand kind of inherently that every situation is different, and sometimes it requires a very strong hand, autocratic leadership style when things are tense and there's an emergency situation. You don't have time for maybe a democratic style where you're kind of getting consensus within a group. You just have to give direct orders to get things done because people are in danger. You have an emergency situation. But day to day, that's not the case in law enforcement. We really are set up to be situational, and I look forward to getting to know the staff at all three campuses, understanding what they bring to the table, and employing, what I kind of call my laissez-faire servant leadership style. It's a kind of a combo, but I get out of people's way once I understand that they have all the tools, knowledge, and experience to do what they're going to do. And then I get out of the way and I help them. I become a coach. I become a facilitator, somebody who can help people to get the job done. And then a mentor, helping those people who might not have the experiences yet, putting them in positions to gain that experience and the training, if it's a post-school or what have you, to really help staff succeed. As leaders, we should be planning to replace ourselves at all times. And we should be putting our people, the people who work for us and with us, first and foremost in front of the organization so that people know that the good work is being done by the people that are there every day serving them.
Thank you. The Ventura County Community College District values open and respectful communication and promotes inclusiveness and openness to differing viewpoints. How would you lead your department to embody these values, and how would you personally conduct yourself in alignment with them? Additionally, how would you lead and direct your team when you may not personally agree with board-approved policies and strategic goals?
Certainly. Inclusiveness, I think is really about respect, open dialogue, being willing to hear, understand, and explore people's opinions and views, especially when they differ from your own. I work not to take anything personally. Uh, I listen with an open mind and an open heart to hear what people are feeling. And I really think that once you begin to understand and know a person, it opens the door to inclusiveness, to acceptance, and to respect. When you don't have those conversations and that communication with people, that's when it's unknown to us, and we tend to be afraid of what we don't understand, or at least we're uneasy with it. And I find that the best way to understand and to break down those things is to step into those conversations and have them, and not be put off by something that's different, something that's not the way you were raised, or the beliefs that you were raised with. And I believe that people are inherently good. I believe that people's beliefs are generally held sincerely. And when you come into a conversation with those sort of mileposts and foundation, it really opens up an opportunity to, like I said, to explore the differences, and in those differences, find common ground. And that's sort of my take.
Great,
And
thank you.
let me touch on that second one. Sorry. You know, throughout our careers, we've all had things that we've had to do that we don't particularly necessarily agree with professionally. Maybe it sort of rubs you raw in a certain way because you're a salty old dog and they want to do something new. Again, it's sort of using that same framework I just talked about, where we talk about the differences. We have an open forum in a private place with our staff so that people can be heard and can talk frankly. I don't have much of an ego. And I also, I'm not offended easily. And so I appreciate people who give me very sharp feedback and express themselves so that they feel heard. At the end of the day, we all know that, one of two things will happen. We'll either readdress a situation or we'll move forward. And that's when you have to have the organizational trust to be able to move forward, even when we disagree with something, knowing that, okay, well, at least we're a team on this, or that your leader or your lieutenant, your shift sergeant has your back enough that he's going to stand up and at least have that conversation for you or with you. And that you're not going to win every battle, but together we're certainly going to make the differences we need to.
Thank you. Given the current political climate and increased presence of federal immigration enforcement agencies, how would you respond to requests for assistance from ICE or other federal agencies on campus? Please address your understanding of applicable laws, district policy, and how you would balance legal compliance with fostering a safe and inclusive educational environment for our diverse student population, which includes undocumented and mixed status students.
Yeah, this is certainly all over the headlines of our state. Some of what's been going on recently is unprecedented in California. Uh, you know, it certainly brings discomfort, anger, a host of emotions to the people who are directly impacted by it, and then those who feel that they're doing the right thing. And there's people on all sides of that spectrum. Most importantly, what we need to understand is that California has very specific and very detailedly written laws and policies that address this. SB 54, the Truth Act, really gives law enforcement its framework and its marching orders for how to address our interactions with immigration. We also have guidance from the Attorney General that is specific to educational environments. In fact, it was just updated at the end of last year, December of 24. And that provides a framework or an organizational structure by which leadership at the community college really helps to define the philosophy of how we're going to handle those interactions. Are we going to, when we notify students that ICE is on campus, how we as law enforcement are going to interact with them. SB 54, again, makes it very makes it very clear that we will not offer assistance. We will not provide information. I helped to implement SB 54 at the sheriff's office when it came on board. It's very dicey when you're talking about detention services and those interplays with ICE. We certainly had our challenges. We stumbled a few times, but again, that pure heart thing that I talked about, with a pure heart, we are always interested in absolute compliance, letter of the law compliance, as well as fostering a community that feels safe with the decisions that we're making. I'm pretty proud to say that in Ventura County, we have a good relationship with immigration groups, groups that are advocating for immigrants, and our open communication with the Mixteco, which is a very hard community to reach, and other organizations, is strong. And we have conversations ahead of time so that they understand our approach and how we will be in compliance with SB 54, so that when situations happen and emotions run high, as we've seen, and people are afraid, they at least have something to fall back on, which is that relationship with their local law enforcement. It's been very dramatic and sort of well, like unprecedented is the word I can use in the terms of how ICE has gone about some of their work. We can agree or disagree on that. I personally believe that a university, a college campus should be a peaceful place, a place where people can come and feel safe, can feel protected, heard, and able to be open about themselves, what they're learning, and their experiences. You know, finding people with immigration violations or situations doesn't have to happen every little place within our community. We as law enforcement, we can choose the time and place in which we enforce a law. Sometimes we follow a car an extra block just because it's a safer place for the person to pull over. And that's a decision we make because it facilitates a safer ability for us to do our job, but also for that other person. And I think there's a lot of room for that kind of a dialogue to take place, to keep ICE out of our protected or our valued locations within our state. We can't stand in their way, but we can certainly ensure that we are following the directives given by the Attorney General, notifying the college president, working with the college president to ensure that we're interfacing with ICE in an appropriate way, to understand if they have a lawful warrant or what their actual purpose is, not providing them information, as I said, not providing them access to areas that they would not normally have. And that's an odd position for law enforcement to be in, but we're kind of used to it in California. We're used to upholding a very distinct set of values and code that our politicians in Sacramento and our leaders and in our local communities have worked to set up. And so we're used to that discomfort. We're used to working with people who are maybe trying to do something that our community doesn't agree with, and we'll stand tall between that to be a calm voice and a voice that can hopefully mitigate or move ICE away from some of their efforts in a way that doesn't impact the college community.
Thank you, Rob. How do you plan to protect students' First Amendment rights, including peaceful assembly and protest, while ensuring campus safety and policy compliance?
Sure. I want to start by saying that we live in Ventura County, and it's a remarkable place. If you look at the history of protest, of freedom of speech in Ventura County, it has a rich and successful history. Recently, the No Kings protests, tens of thousands of people across the entire county protested with no interaction with law enforcement. We have had people literally on both sides of the street, one advocating one point of view, the other advocating the other. And it's remarkable and I've by chance driven through them, and it's remarkable to see the interplay of First Amendment rights, but people's base respect for one another. That, again, I talked about that kind of opening. I believe people are truly good. And it's great to watch that, how it happens in Ventura County. One of the things Ventura County has done that I'm very proud of, that the individuals who helped develop this approach to public protest have done a great job, and that is you have the resources available to you, but you put them out of sight, and then you monitor what's going on. Law enforcement by its nature can be antagonistic, especially when you are advocating for a point of view, especially right now when it's something that involves the enforcement of laws that you don't agree with. And so to place law enforcement between protesters and an area that they're at just heightens people's concerns, their fears, their their anger, to be quite honest, their anger. And so by keeping those resources out of sight and simply monitoring until it might be necessary to step in, you allow people again to say what they need to say, to protest in an appropriate manner, to cross streets and do those things that are important when we're expressing our dissatisfaction. And then only if it's necessary, we would bring law enforcement in. But I've shortchanged that. What's even more important is that those groups that organize these protests, we need to have connections with them ahead of time. We need to have at least a relationship with those leaders so that they understand what our goals are and how we will respond should something get out of hand. We would like to work with them to say, hey, if agitators from outside the area show up at your event, what are your thoughts on how we can handle that and address it so that your people don't get sucked into maybe people who have a different agenda and are using your event to sort of change the optics of what's going on. And so having those conversations and again, building that trust ahead of time provides us with the opportunity to again, have an understanding. So if things do start to go wrong, if damage to property starts to occur or if violence starts to sort of erupt, we can step in and the leaders of that protest can help, knowing that they can trust that we are going to stand to the methods that we've talked about with them. And it can be done hopefully in the most calm and rational manner. When you have to step in, we step in. But it's been our experience in Ventura County, if you trust people to do the right thing with protests, they will. I know that doesn't work everywhere. I want to be real clear. My eyes are open. We live right on the edge of Los Angeles County. It isn't always like that, and I understand that. So I don't, I'm not preaching, granola and rainbows on this. It can happen in Ventura County. We've had a few unfortunate events that have happened. I'm thinking of Westlake and the gentleman who fell over and passed away. So it's not uncommon in Ventura County, but it's not the norm as well. On a college campus, time, manner, and place, we have abilities to have restrictions, guidelines for when, where, and how people can protest. That's because a school, again, should be a safe, quiet, sanctity place for people. And so if you are going to protest on a college campus, there, as long as we have a reasonable government interest in helping to form how and where and why that happens, we can. And so we do need to understand, and we need to educate the organizers of protests that there might be some restrictions, and we'll talk about them ahead of time. I've looked at the emergency operation plans for all three campuses. I really like that the college presidents are first and foremost in that. When you're the sheriff's office, you're kind of a standalone law enforcement agency. From policy formation through enforcement through being open to the public and feeling the consequences of your actions if it goes wrong. It's all held by the sheriff's office. You have an elected sheriff, so it's a insular group, and we made our own decisions with very little input from others. So we bore the risks as well as the reward. Being a police department on a college campus, our errors can have untold consequences on our education system and how people view that and how they interact with it and whether they come, whether they feel welcome there. So it's very important to work with the college presidents, with the district, the chancellor's office, to ensure that we are in line with their values, their policies, and also their vision for what a college campus is going to look like, what protest on a college campus looks and feels like, how those protesters are treated, how welcome they feel, and the restrictions. So I like that. I like that you have a kind of a yin and a yang. So you've got the administrators who are looking long term and really what's the purpose of a college campus. It's not to have a police department. Sadly, it's a necessity. But it is a necessity, and that needs to be understood as well. So I like it. I like the interplay. I like the dialogue, and I like that it's been thought about ahead of time. That it's very well laid out for all three campuses how things will be addressed, and I would look forward to being a part of that and helping to address things in the future.
Thank you. Can you describe a time when you had to respond to a critical incident? What went well? What could have been better? And what did you learn?
Sure. Probably to talk about critical incidents, probably I could talk about, murder scenes and things that are kind of small scale. We understand as law enforcement, you address it, you secure the scene, you get your resources, you plan how you're going to move forward, and you move forward. But let's talk about things that can impact and do impact entire communities. Most prevalent in my mind would be the Thomas Fire. I was actually in Monterey at a HR training of all things the night that the Thomas Fire started. I saw on the news that it had started, and there was something about the speed, just the ferociousness of that fire that told me that this is not going to go well. So I just immediately drove home. I won't tell you how fast I made it home, but I drove home. And the very next day ended up being the law enforcement incident commander for the fire. And for the next 36 days, that's what I did. I was the incident commander for law enforcement within the county for day shift for the entirety of the fire, interfacing with Ventura Police, Santa Paula Police, Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department when it got to that point, Cal Fire. It's tense, and you're talking about evacuating tens upon tens of thousands of people. And you have to ensure that you have a solid structure of support around you, that you're planning. You have a team that's planning out ahead. You can't always afford to just deal with one thing. So you have to have trusted people around you that can handle their business, that laissez-faire leadership I talked about, where you see that they have the abilities and you trust them to handle what they're assigned to. What can go better? What did we learn from that? Certainly, I think the most dicey thing was the repopulation. At the end of the fire, they're worn out. They've been staying in parking lots, hotels, on friends' couches, all these things, and they just want to go home. And they want to see if they have a home to go home to. The state of California has very strict guidelines for how you repopulate an evacuated area. It includes Edison, checking power lines and water lines and all these things that can take a long time. And there was friction. There was friction between the residents, friction between Cal Fire and its organization. And in the middle of that, you had law enforcement trying to, kind of balance it all. And what could go better? We probably should have talked about what was going to happen at the end while it was happening. Of course, in a Thomas Fire where you're losing, hundreds and hundreds of homes in hours, it's hard to talk about, well, what are we going to do when it ends? So you do have to have that. We could have had another trusted person to work on that even as it was going on. So that's what could have gone better. And that's what I would bring again to any of these situations is, okay, if it's important to talk about what happens if we have a protest. It's important to talk about what we are going to do if, heaven forbid, we have a major crime incident on one of our campuses, one that really strikes fear into the students. It's important to talk about how we'll address that. How will we work with our law enforcement partners? Also, we need to be thinking in that moment, how are we going to recover from this at the end? And what I mean by that is, what are we going to put in place to rise our community up, raise it up, and to help those people who have been traumatized by this, but whatever it might be. You can insert whatever kind of comes to your mind. So that was my takeaway, is always be planning for that end step, that end goal, so that you can seamlessly transition from emergency response and recovery to really sort of the care and feeding of the population that you're entrusted with. And I think that's one of the most valuable things of law enforcement, is caring for our community, and understanding what your community is. And on a college campus, your community is young people who are exploring life, who are spreading their wings and are going to make mistakes. And we need to have a police department that understands that and allows for some missteps, but also has guardrails that show that, there's certain conduct that's unacceptable, obviously. And we are here to deal with that, but we're also going to deal with you in a fair and equitable way. We've blown through these things. Is there a?
Oh, no, we're doing good.
Okay.
We're doing good,
good.
In terms of time.
Oh,
yeah.
When I came in, I didn't turn this on. Now I got to read these beforehand. Now we're really going to see how I do. Okay.
All right. How do you envision your role as chief of police in serving and supporting our students across all 3 colleges? How will you stay informed about student needs and concerns? And how would you work to build and maintain strong relationships with faculty, classified staff, college administrators, and the broader community?
That's it. That's terrific. And I threw a little in that last question because I thought it was the end, but I'll go back to that. So the role of the chief of police um, you know, is one to provide the strategic vision and direction to the police department. In this particular instance, that's also ensuring you're culturally and uh, you're culturally in line with the philosophy of the district. And that's kind of a nice thing because you kind of have someone to help check yourself with when it comes to how you're addressing things. I went to Ventura College. I took some classes there early on in my process. I'm proud to say that my daughter is a graduate of the Ventura nursing program, and she's a nurse in our community today. She worked for many years for public health and is now working with underserved populations in Gold Coast Health, and I couldn't be prouder of the work that she does. So I have a real sense of ownership when it comes to the colleges, all of them. I have a friend whose son graduated from the fire science at Oxnard. So I feel like I have a deep buy-in to what the community colleges do. How do you have contact and touch and keep in touch and trust with them? Well, you have to be seen, so you have to be out there and doing things, but you also have to have lieutenants, sergeants, and the officers who are doing that. The chief of police is an important position, and it provides a figurehead who sets a tone and can set the wrong tone or the right tone. But the reach and breadth of our department on the campus is really the officers and that lieutenant that's there. And if so, along with them and in concert with them, I would undertake a process of getting to know the faculty senates, getting to know the clubs, working with student clubs and student groups, obviously the leadership of the individual college campuses, and listening. The most important thing, law enforcement, we like to tell people what to do. It's just in our blood, sorry. But listening and putting on those listening ears, and learning from those experiences, that's how you really ensure that you're serving them. Because if you're not hearing what they're telling you, and I mean really hearing and understanding it, you're going to miss the mark. And people will tell you what they need. You just have to listen. Yeah, we're good there.
Great. All right. Our department faces low staffing levels and recruitment retention challenges. Given these challenges, how will you foster morale and use your experience to move the department forward?
Yeah, I imagine that the college police departments, more so than any other law enforcement agency in the county, faces this struggle. It's a very unique environment in which you're enforcing the laws. I would imagine that young people who are approaching the academy and excited, they want to work out in the cities. They want to do the things that they've always seen or heard, or what cops do. And then you offer them a job where you're asked to lean into the humanities side of law enforcement. More of the interpersonal communication styles, and how do you talk to students who are finding their voice? I think I mentioned that earlier. How do you talk to a kid who's finding his voice and might say some pretty rough things to you, because they've had experiences and they're learning and they feel safe in this environment to say a few things to you, and how do you deal with that? So I imagine it is hard to invite people and have them want to come work in that environment. That's a challenge, but there are people out there that have that and believe in that. I think it's an important recruiting tool to understand. I also think there's the things, though, that the college has that really leverage an ability to possibly bring law enforcement officers later in their careers over. You guys don't work dawn shift, nights, overnights. That's a thing that cops do, and some love it, some hate it. But the schedule is really a positive. There are holidays that aren't worked. There's the gap week between Christmas and New Year's. These are things that are unheard of in law enforcement, right? It's get in your car. It's, I know it's Christmas morning and you have children at home, but go. So I think there are real opportunities to find people who have had a storied career, are ready for something different, but aren't quite ready to hang up their hat yet. So I would be interested in exploring that as an opportunity. finding an ability maybe to, well, steal a little bit of the playbook from the sheriff's office. They've done some really great recruiting things lately, and finding retired people to come back and work in courts and things of that nature. So there's a lot of creativity that I think that can be done. Now that's the recruiting side, but how do we help the guys that are doing the work now, that are working doubles and pulling just crazy shifts to keep things filled? You at some point you got to meet with the organization of them and say, what's our breaking point? At what point does this become untenable, and how do we plan for that? We just can't say rah rah, you do a great job, thanks for your commitment, by the way, here's 4 more shifts. That you can do that a few times, but then it just falls on deaf ears, because you're not trying to take care of the problem. So meeting with officers, meeting with the lieutenants and the sergeants and the CSOs, and saying, okay, what can we find as a solution? Are there scheduling changes, temporary or permanent, that we could look at? Do I need to go back and discuss with the district some changing of hours? What can we do to make today, next month, in the next 6 months, more manageable for all of us? And then projecting what that would look like. Again, I'm not a guy that puts his head in the sand. I don't believe that a nice email and a pat on the back and a $5 Starbucks card solves problems. It just doesn't. Chief, I see you smiling and shaking your head. I think you probably walked that walk. I get that. I get it. There's a time and a place for it, right? I mean, you want to show appreciation. They're not empty things, but you also have to know that doesn't solve a guy's problem, or an officer's problem when they've worked 4 doubles in the last 2 weeks, and we're talking 12-hour shifts. So a double is a really long time to work, and it's a lot of time away from families. So I'd be open to having really constructive conversations. And at some point you have to have a groundswell and just a fundamental change in what you do. If the numbers aren't there and you're losing people and destroying family lives, you've got to have real conversations about what real change would look like.
Thank you. How would you approach making an important operational change when stakeholders disagree? How would you communicate this change to both your department and the college community?
Yeah, I think we can look to the past for a roadmap on these things. I mean, and one of the things we talked about earlier, SB 54, and other changes in the law enforcement world have come with sort of wide-eyed, and what is this, right? But if we look back now, it's like putting on our shoes now. We're very accustomed to it. We work with it. We've accepted it. But in the moment, when it feels very different, and officers are unsure of what it's going to feel like doing it the certain way, and the community is unsure of what it's going to feel like when this change is made, you have to go have those conversations. You have to be willing, again, to hear what people are telling you. I would like to think that before I were to steer the agency, and the district into a situation like that, I would have had some of those precursor conversations. You can't walk into a room with a nicely printed up policy and say, surprise guys, look what I figured out. I have a master's from USC. Look, this here it is. You don't win friends that way. You alienate the district because there's a wild curve. Where did that come from, Rob? So there has to be, the precursor has to be conversation. There has to be some exploration of what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, projections of how this policy might affect scheduling, staffing, payroll. You have to think about all these things. So how would I work with it? And people, I'd talk to them ahead of time, and we'd have those conversations. And if I disagree, I'm going to share that I disagree. But I'll be open to adjustments or to input that might impact how I present it. How there's the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, and there's in that interplay we find common ground. And so ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And like I said, I don't have an ego. So if somebody walks in my office and says, I think you're making a mistake and here's why, they're not going to walk out thinking, oh man, I've got a target on my back from the chief. No, I'm going to say, wow, that's a guy I want around, because he's going to keep me from making a big mistake, because he's brave, and he or she is willing to stand up and say what they feel. To me, that's not a malcontent. That's the kind of person you want to value in your organization. Oh, yeah.
Great. Please address how you would handle campus property issues such as ongoing vandalism and misuse of campus grounds. Additionally, how would you ensure campus safety during after-hours operations when darkness and isolation present real security challenges?
Yeah, I was reviewing the annual report that was out, and I noticed there were a few years where vehicle burglaries just spiked like crazy, and I was wondering, okay, I wonder what they did to address that. There's a lot of technologies that are out there now that we can leverage to help address things like this. We have great partners with Oxnard, the sheriff's office, Ventura Police, things that we can use via surveillance cameras or certain types of technologies and alarms that allow us to address crime on our campuses. While students want to feel free and have an ability to not feel restricted by the presence of law enforcement, equally, they don't want to show up to their car after class, find the back window broken, and their laptop has been stolen. Leaning on our relationships and working with our partners, making sure that our own investigators have the tools, the skills, and the ability and the experience to be able to address these things. If we need to shuffle some personnel for a time being to address, a hot spot, I'm for that. I find that the people with the boots on the ground, when something like this happens, they have the ideas. They know what needs to be done. They can be creative, and that's when that directive but laissez-faire style that I have is, when the hounds are barking at the door and they want to run, and the wolf is out there and it's dark, let them run, right? Let them do what they know how to do. We're talking appropriately. I don't want to create a situation where we're just running across the campus going crazy, but I'm talking about focused, specific, purposeful law enforcement to address a situation. We have great partners within the community, so if it's a resource issue, we can leverage that. The county has a retail theft group right now that's been very effective. They are always looking for ways to help, and if we had a situation that required it, we could certainly use that. I'm ignoring part of the question, which is after-hour safety. We have programs like the Safe Walk to Your Car program. We have visible patrol, especially during those evening hours. It's important to be highly visible during those times so that people feel safe. There's nothing nicer than walking to your car across a dark parking lot, but you see a police car slowly drive by. Even if it's in the distance, it just gives you a sense of, okay, I'm in a safe place. So ensuring that our patrols, our officers on patrol, are highly visible during those times is very important. The extreme after hours, the middle of the night type things, if we're having issues, if we're having misuse of the college grounds or things that are taking place, criminal activity taking place after hours, we can put our heads together and work on deploying people during those hours for very specific reasons, putting together a team that can address something, and some very focused, specific enforcement activity we'll just throw Moore Park out there, not for any reason, but if Moore Park's having that problem, let's grab some officers, create a task force, and say, let's address this. We need to bring in other resources. 32 years with the sheriff's office, I know a few people, and I wouldn't be afraid to do that. What I know for sure is that the lieutenants on the campus, they know their local police departments as well. We're about to run short of time, but those are the things I would do. Thanks.
All right. Well, that actually brings our interview to a close. Is there anything you would like to share about your qualifications or approach that we haven't covered in our previous questions?
I feel comfortable that you've kind of got a sense of who I am and how I am. I don't, I've said it a few times. My ego is wrapped up in my effectiveness, not in the perception of me. What I bring. I come from a big agency. For Ventura County, it's big compared to some to our south. We're quite small, but I come from a big agency, and what does that mean? It means that we've experienced and gone through the same things that the college police department has gone through, right? We face the same issues. We face the same problems. Because I was in a big agency, it just means the repetition of many of those things has been a lot. So I have good experiences in dealing with things that maybe only happen 2 or 3 times in a smaller department. And it could be any department. So I have had the benefit of repetition. I've had the benefit of literally hundreds of people coming up with ways of approaching things. So it's a deep bench of players, a deep bench of experience. And so having the ability to come from a large agency, I think, can be leveraged very well to a small agency. And I don't think I did a great job of sharing why, why is this big department guy wanting to come to a small agency? I like people. I'm a people person. That's what I live, breathe, and feed from. And so I like the opportunity and the idea of working closely with people, with the officers, with the lieutenants, and with the district and the college leadership. I look forward to that, and I value it. And I guess that would conclude it. This has been really fun. Thank you. Some smiling nods and faces, which is very much appreciated when you're guys sitting here. And as I said, I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the opportunity if asked, and you'd get the whole of me. Like I said, I was born and raised in Goleta. Lived here for over 40 years in Ventura County. Like I said, my daughter's a nurse here. My wife, was a hairstylist for 35 years. We have deep roots in this community, and I look forward to serving it. And the college system has played an important part and role in my life, so I understand the impacts it can have on others. And I also see the employees, and they seem to be very happy, very fulfilled in the people I've talked to, and that's a pretty special thing too. And so that's the kind of organization I'd like to be a part of and help to continue to build. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you for being here today. And everybody, Mr. Rob Davidson, thank you again.
Oh, shall we turn these off?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome back our viewing audience there online, as well as our public audience here this morning. Today, we have our second candidate, Christopher Jayton, who would like to ask a few questions. And again, we're here for the public forum for the position of Chief of Police. All right, Christopher, well, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So please tell us how your educational background, experience, and qualifications have prepared you to serve as Chief of Police for the Ventura County Community College District.
Yes, well, thank you, and thank you for having me this morning. It's a beautiful day in Camarillo, as we are, I can't believe, approaching the end of June already. Um, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in Ventura County, right? Rio Mesa High School graduate. Don't know if I should say that or not. But been here my entire career, right? So after high school, one of the things, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a peer counselor in high school. I knew that I liked helping folks. Law enforcement, to be honest, at that time wasn't even something that I was thinking. I thought I was going to be a counselor and go into counseling. And so I embarked my journey at Ventura College, actually, right? And so went to Ventura College, did 2 years there, completing all of my general education credits before someone started talking to me all about California State University, Channel Islands. And back then, this was, I shouldn't date myself, but Channel Islands was in its first year, right? So it was brand new, didn't know anything about it. Family is very important to me. Didn't really want to go far away. I had family here, deeply rooted in the community. And so after completing my general education at Ventura College, went to Cal State Channel Islands, where I completed my degree in psychology, still thinking that I was going to go into counseling of some sort. But as fate would have it, during my time as a student at Cal State Channel Islands, I worked for the police department, right? They were hiring student employees, and I was one of their first community service officers. And we did everything from parking enforcement and traffic control to giving safety escorts. And in the early years, Channel Islands was a little creepy at night, right? It was very dark and still very much Camarillo State Hospital-esque feelings. And so there was about 12 of us at that time, would do safety escorts and drive golf carts around. It was the best job in the world. As a student, got to spend more time there because, as you know, then, I mean, the population was so small, but I got to meet so many people that way and got to interact daily with our police officers, which is what made me, and I should also say that prior to this, from high school through until I while I was working at Ventura College, I worked for California State Parks. And so as a visitor services aide out in Malibu, and I thought, okay, I could wear a uniform. I could do this. This is good. And I got to see what those guys were doing out there. But it was really Channel Islands that cemented it home for me, right? Got to see the officers' interactions, the daily interactions with the students, and how they were able to take someone on their worst moment of their life, at least what they thought was the worst moment of their life, and help them come out of it on the other side, and making sure that the student was supported. And what I liked about university policing at that moment, from that perspective, was that these didn't seem like what you saw on TV, which we all know is not real, to them really caring about the students on that campus, right? And giving me advice and working with me and talking with me when I had issues that came up. And so from there, I worked a number of years until I graduated with my degree as a student there. And upon graduation, the department offered me a position as a full-time public safety officer, which at our campus is kind of a reverse from the community college, right? The community college does CSOs and cadets, but the terms are just swapped, right? And so then I went into what would have been a CSO position here at Channel Islands. And I did that for a couple of years where I wrote the first policy manuals for the CSO program, got very involved with leadership there, and still thinking, okay, but this was at a time when everyone was in a hiring freeze. No one was hiring police officers anywhere. The academy hadn't run in almost 2 years because of the budget, right? In '08, if everyone remembers back then. And so I worked a couple of years as the community service officer until one day the lieutenant walked into my office. It was really a closet. And asked me if I was still interested in going to the academy, which of course I was. And he told me that they were going to be putting someone through the academy, and they'd never done that before. And so I got the opportunity to test and get through that process. And I was the first person from Channel Islands to ever go through the Ventura County Sheriff's Academy from representing that department, which was a lot, right? A lot of weight on my shoulders because I was told by so many people that you can't fail. And, we had people fail on day one of the academy. But I knew then that that's what I wanted to do and push through the academy. One of the most fun but most challenging things that you never want to have to go through again, right? But after the academy, became an officer at Channel Islands, and I loved it. Once an officer, became a sergeant after 3 years, very quick into my time as an officer. And I think I credit that really to my previous time at the department in leadership roles, working with campus administration, learning how the campus worked, right? The inner workings of the university, and which allowed me to build connections. And I think really that's what is important, especially for a chief of police, is the relationships that you build along the way. I have a wonderful group of connections from Channel Islands, but also within the community, because I not only served as a sergeant at CSU Channel Islands, but I was lucky enough to promote to lieutenant and spent the last 5 years as lieutenant and second in command over there at Cal State Channel Islands. Got a number of wonderful opportunities, and the questions asking a lot of things, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about a couple of my experiences along the way. One of my primary focuses, one that I hold deep and dear to my heart, was as a sexual assault investigator. And the university, for a number of years, as with the community college district, we have what's known as a Kristen Smart agreement, right? And it's required by federal law that we have this agreement with our local agencies, because the universities, and colleges don't have the same resources necessarily as the sheriff's office or Oxnard PD or any of the larger agencies. And there are unique challenges with working in a small department. But the Kristen Smart agreement that we had at the time, it requires us to have an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with our local agencies about who's responsible for what types of investigations, particularly Part 1 crimes. And so at the time, homicide, forcible rape, kidnapping, officer-involved shootings, all of those things are on this agreement. But as you may or may not know, on a university campus and on a college campus, we have a little thing called the Jean Clary Act. And the Clary Act complicates sexual assault investigations, not always for the better, as far as it comes to being able to close out a criminal case, being able to get a conviction in a criminal court, and occasionally to the detriment of the survivor, which is not what we wanted, right? And especially when at that time we worked with some amazing detectives from the sheriff's office, but they didn't understand Clary, and it always put us at a conflict, right? Because we would tell them, hey, we have to do X. And for example, one of those things is called a timely warning, right? And what the Clary Act says is, as soon as reasonably practicable, we have to give a timely warning to the campus community, right? If there is a serious or continuing threat to campus safety, and it defines a sexual assault as a serious or continuing threat, right? Well, a detective who potentially is building a case against a suspect that they may know or may not know doesn't want necessarily to put out a general warning to the entire campus, because they don't want to tip off that person that they know about the incident. And that always put us in conflict, but we were able to navigate it. And so one of the things that I'm particularly proud of is we advocated at that time to get our own sexual assault investigators. And I was fortunate enough to advocate for that, go to sexual assault school, spent a number of years as an officer and as a sergeant overseeing our sexual assault unit as a collateral assignment. Got to meet some wonderful people in county, right? Served on the Safe Harbor, which is our multidisciplinary center in county through the district attorney's office for victims of sexual assault and child crimes. And got to serve on that steering committee, which was an amazing experience. And ultimately was the chair of that committee until I promoted to lieutenant in 2019. So that's just one of my experiences, but I'm particularly proud of that. I hold survivors of sexual assault near and dear to my heart. And I think as a community, we need to do a better job of supporting those individuals as they move through. And if you can imagine being a university student, dealing with all of your classes and the stress and anxiety that comes with finals and midterms, but also having to deal with the trauma of something like that, not knowing who you can talk to, and not knowing the resources. It's so important that we can work through those resources with our students, making sure that the students are comfortable to speak with us, that know that we're there for them, and that we want to provide them with assistance and with our campus partners, right? And then lastly, I know this question's kind of gone, but I'll just say that I got some amazing opportunities at Channel Islands, including the Sherman Block Supervisory Leadership Institute as a sergeant, and then most recently as a lieutenant. I was honored to complete the post-command college program this last July.
Great. Thank you for that. What is your leadership philosophy? And can you provide a specific example of how you've demonstrated effective leadership?
Yeah, leadership is always such a loaded question. There's so many different aspects to it that I'm one that I don't believe you can just say, leadership is this. Leadership is being able to take a group of individuals and kind of hold the North Star and move that group of individuals towards that goal, right? And sometimes they may or may not agree with that goal, which is difficult. But of all the different leadership styles that I've learned, for me, servant leadership is something that comes to mind the most. You could talk about situational leadership and adaptive leadership and all of these different leadership styles. But for me, and my previous chief talks about it in an inverted pyramid, right? And the leader's role is to support the folks, his direct reports, their direct reports, to be there to provide support for them so that we can accomplish the goal that we're moving towards, right? And that means sometimes difficult conversations. That means sometimes mentoring. And I think mentorship and servant leadership for me is the most important aspect of that. And so an example of that for me would be one of the other things I did, which was the most fulfilling in my career, which was to serve as a field training officer, right? And so early on, I have mixed feelings about how soon someone should be a field training officer, and I was able to do that very early on, within 2 years, which is fast. But acknowledging that you don't know it all and that we're going to learn through things together, I think is important, right? And so constantly being willing to learn and change. I'm a lifelong learner. And so higher ed to me is super important. And so being able to mentor and see the officers that I was able to train and get through field training promote, right? And move up through the ranks and take on other specialties, or even go to other departments and do big and great things. And so I think for me, that's the most rewarding part of leadership, is seeing the folks that you were able to help mentor along the way do great things.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Ventura County Community College District values open and respectful communication and promotes inclusiveness and openness to differing viewpoints. How would you lead your department to embody these values, and how would you personally conduct yourself in alignment with them? Additionally, how would you lead and direct your team when you may not personally agree with board-approved policies and strategic goals?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, listen, one of the things I admire about the community college district are their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion across all three campuses. And I note that the missions of those campuses are slightly different, but the underlying theme really is equity and inclusivity across the campuses. As it was with Channel Islands, and means a great deal to me. Dignity and respect. It really comes down to treating all people with dignity and respect, but also making a safe place on campuses so that students can speak out, so that students can tell us what they like. That's what the higher education environment is all about: challenging the norm, being able to learn and express different feelings. And I think I want to embrace those things. We all have underlying biases that unconscious biases that we deal with on a regular basis. Uh, if anyone ever says they don't, they're lying to you, or they just don't know. One of the things I did at Channel Islands, or I shouldn't take credit for because I didn't create it, but the university made a big push towards DEI initiatives in the last few years. And they ran a pilot program which was combating racism on campus. And they asked for volunteer administrators to go through that program, and I was one of the first people in line to raise my hands. And it's an eye-opening experience, heartbreaking to hear the personal stories of folks and what they have gone through in their lives, and being able to offer my own experiences in that realm, right? I'm of Japanese descent. My family has dealt with a lot over the years related to internment after the war, and the feelings of never really fitting in with the Japanese folks or the American folks, and trying to combat those feelings. But then also, I think our community is unique. We're very resilient. We're very much committed to that. Even all the way back to Rio Mesa High School, right? It was all about diversity. We had folks from the poorest walks of life through to the richest walks of life at Rio Mesa, and you learn really early that we're all humans. We're all the same. And that's one of the things. Tolerance. When I was a peer resource at the high school, was something that we talked about constantly, and being able to go through, for example, the Tools for Tolerance program at the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles. I've been to that program 3 times, and I was like, why 3 times? Well, first time as a student, second time in the academy, and then as an instructor for Tools for Tolerance later in my later years. And so I think being vulnerable, opening up ourselves, and being able to connect is important. And I know there's other parts to this question. And it's really about being authentic and true. I think trust is so important, and only takes one incident on campus to lose trust, right? Which is difficult, but for officers on the campuses, right? It's I think of it like a bank, and you have to constantly add to the bank with positive experiences, right? How can we build connections uh, with our uh, uh, with our dream undocumented population? How can we build connections with our LGBTQ communities? How can we connect with, you know, uh, the athletics teams, but also the folks in EOP and first generation college students, to make sure that and let them know that we're here to support them, right? That we understand what they're going through. Um, and lastly, on this, I think, you know, the question about what I would do and how would I direct my team when I don't personally agree with board approved policies. There are times and places to object to policies, and I think working with the administration, one of the things that I've always learned was you complain up, not down, right? And so, yeah, I think it would be the job of the chief to advocate for the policy that they believe is righteous, right? But there are going to be times when you don't have a policy that you agree with. And it's so important that you don't complain down to the troops, to show them that, look, here's what it is, and here's how we're going to accomplish this policy, while also respectfully having dialogue with leadership to explain your concerns and perhaps your frustrations, but not showing those down.
Great, thank you. Okay. Given the current political climate and increased presence of federal immigration enforcement agencies, how would you respond to requests for assistance from ICE or other federal agencies on campus? Please address your understanding of applicable laws, district policy, and how you would balance legal compliance with fostering a safe and inclusive educational environment for our diverse student population, which includes undocumented and mixed status students.
Thank you for that question. Such an important question in the current environment. And well, first and foremost, as with all law enforcement agencies in the county, we do not participate in immigration enforcement, right? And the university police or the campus police, our job really is to help our students feel safe. We want them to feel safe coming to us, reporting crimes so that we can support them. SB 54, the Values Act, right? We are not allowed as California law enforcement to provide assistance or intelligence to federal authorities in relation to immigration enforcement. And I think that's important for our student population to know. We want to be the intermediary to help them feel safe on campus. We want all students to feel safe on campus, and we do not participate in immigration enforcement.
Thank you. How do you plan to protect students' First Amendment rights, including peaceful assembly and protest, while ensuring campus safety and policy compliance?
Well, thank you. Yes, well, I have quite a bit of experience with First Amendment issues on university campuses. In fact, the university recently, in the wake of the Israel-Hamas conflict, had quite a bit of activity going on out at Cal State Channel Islands. First, I'll say this: as I stated in my first question, which university and college campuses are here for civil dissent, are here to challenge convention and norms, and we have to be able to protect everyone's First Amendment rights. That said, we have to make sure it's safe. And, you know, the university and the college have enacted time, place, and manner policies that allow us to restrict overnight encampments, to make sure that we're keeping things safe and peaceful for our students. And what we've seen time and time again is the students, by and large, are peaceful at these events. They want to share their point of view, and I think that's an important thing. What we can't allow is for that to devolve into violence, right? And I'll say at Channel Islands, we did a good job of that. There was no violence. We didn't have vandalism. We allowed a space for them to conduct their activities. And we were there not only to protect the campus community, but to protect them, right? To ensure that they didn't have conflicts. One of the things, in fact, the Casa Pacifica Food and Wine Festival came onto campus during that encampment. And we worked on a strategy to work with the encampment so that we were able to make sure that we didn't have counter points of view or conflict between guests and the encampment there. But at the end of the day, the universities and the colleges, they are not a place that encampments are dangerous, especially living overnight, and we don't want to allow them to build large structures or create vandalism or create unsafe environments where our other students would feel unsafe coming to campus to learn and to get their experience.
Okay, thank you. Can you describe a time when you had to respond to a critical incident? What went well? What could have been better? And what did you learn?
Yeah, well, over the years, there's been a number of critical incidents, but I think I'll talk briefly about the Springs fire in 2013, just because there were learning points out of that incident. And as you know, we have California wildfire season, and Camarillo this last year. What a tragic event that was. The Thomas fire before that, and Hill Woolsey and Springs in 2013. And the university out there is a small department, but we have not only the campus community, we have University Glen, which is a residential neighborhood with 3,000 to 4,000 residents back there at the time. And it's as with all major incidents, the first 30 to 45 minutes of that incident are like a fog and a chaotic scene, right? Trying to gain control, trying to figure out what's going on. I have at the time responded in. I was at the command post. We set up a command post. There was another sergeant who was in charge at that moment. Set up a command post, and for whatever reason, we were right in the path of the fire, and so we had to manage the evacuations, get the campus messaging out, and engage with leadership, but also then worry about, okay, we need to move. And so being able to move that command post while still maintaining operations, working with unified command with our fire partners, sheriff's office partners, to make sure that everyone got out safely. But with all major incidents, I think communication seems to always be the point where we run into difficulties, not just us, but you look at any major incident from be it borderline all the way down to, a commencement ceremony. It's always seems to come down to communication can always improve. And so working to improve those lines of communication and those relationships in advance, had we not built the relationships we did in advance of those incidents, it would have been far worse, right? And so being able to lean on, hey, I need to call my buddy over at Sheriff's OES and say, hey, we need help. This is what's going on. Those are the things that really helped and saved the day, right? And so I think for me, our communication center at times at Channel Islands, which is also the communication center for the community college district. We contract the community college district. At times, there's one dispatcher there. And if you can imagine an incident happening on even one of the campuses can overwhelm that space. And so cross-training, I let in it, we cross-trained our public safety officers so that they could run in and assist with answering calls on radio. to get additional bodies in there. There were times as a lieutenant when I was in there answering calls and making radio calls, which is not what we want. But the challenges of a small department, as you all will know, sometimes require us to do everything, wear many hats. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's communication. We can always work on that. But it's building those relationships when it's not a crisis that helps save us through those moments.
Thank you. How do you envision your role as chief of police in serving and supporting our students across all 3 colleges? How will you stay informed about student needs and concerns, and how would you work to build and maintain strong relationships with faculty, classified staff, college administrators, and the broader community?
Thank you for that. So important. I think for me, it's a little unique thinking of the 3 campuses. I've always had one, right? But that is no less, the challenge is no less important. And I think that working with, not only for me, it was the balance of working with leadership, the university president, the cabinet, the deans of students, but also with student government and faculty senate, and working to build those relationships and look about where can the department be value added, right? I think the difference between university and municipal law enforcement isn't so much that, I mean, yes, we do all the things municipal law enforcement does, but what we also do is create this safe environment for our students to thrive, making sure that we're building those relationships. All agencies do community-oriented policing, but at a university or a college, you really have to take that to the next level. And fortunately, we typically have time to do those things because we're not as busy as some of the municipalities in other areas, right? So spending time to work with not only the chancellor and the executive team here, but with the college presidents, the deans on the individual campuses. You know, at Channel Islands, I served on, I know they're called different things at each of the campuses, but I served on our care and bit teams at Channel Islands, right? Working to ensure that we're providing support to our most vulnerable population, trying to prevent incidents of violence on campus. And so sometimes that's, maybe law enforcement needs to be involved, but sometimes it's, okay, we have this student who's in need. How can we get them the resources that they need? And being able to recognize that, hey, this student is causing issues over here at the registrar's office and in counseling, but, you know, and all these different, but how do we get all of those groups to talk together so that we can provide the best level of service? And working with those care and bit teams is so crucial. But for me, it's getting out to those campuses, building those relationships. I need to know who the vice presidents for student affairs are. I need to know the academic leaders and the faculty and the staff. You'd be surprised how many incidents that we learned of because of the dedicated staff member who came forward and said, hey, you know what? I recognize this student over here having this issue. And had we not built those relationships, they wouldn't have come to us, right? And so I think it really is about getting out there with the officers, encouraging patrols, encouraging involvement in programming on all these campuses. At Channel Islands, everyone does coffee with the cops. I thought it would be fun. We did cocoa with the popo, getting out there, doing different events to engage not only with students, but with faculty and staff, and building that relationship so that the co-governance can happen on college campuses. It's so important that we engage with both faculty and staff and student leadership. Can't forget student government, right? And the student leaders on the campus, and how often I have wonderful relationships. One of the, you know, I don't know, many of you may know Atticus Reyes, who is now a school board member up in Ojai, but was a student government president, works in one of the supervisors our assemblyman's office. And so just working to build those relationships, I think, is so important. because as I said, all it takes is one incident. And if you didn't build those relationships in advance, the job becomes exponentially more difficult.
Thank you for that. Our department faces low staffing levels and recruitment retention challenges. Given these challenges, how will you foster positive morale and use your experience to move the department forward?
Yeah, thank you. I'm no uh, I have a lot of experience when it comes to departmental staffing issues, especially with small departments, right? At Channel Islands, um, we were lucky enough recently to be mostly fully staffed, but going through budgetary hardships and losing staff members, it has become more and more difficult across all of law enforcement to staff up, particularly with these college campuses. I want to provide, I think the chief needs to work with leadership to provide the best tools, the best opportunity for their officers. I know that, recently the district went through a salary survey and they're trying to get salaries up. But if we can't get salaries up completely to where they should be, what else can we do? Can we get the best equipment, the best vehicles, the best protective gear? Can we work to improve morale through programming, through events, through getting the department together in different morale building activities, right? Team building activities of sorts. And then also it really comes down to advocating. And we want the best officers on our college campuses. And I think you can't do that if you can't recruit. And so how do we convince leadership of the importance of those recruitments? Because we don't want a bad apple on one of the campuses. All I said, all it takes is one, right? And holding a high standard, working with our officers to ensure that we're promoting all of the wonderful things that I'm sure are happening on all those campuses on a daily basis. How do we promote that? We engage in social media promotions. Do we get out there with the students and work in partnership with our campus community to build those positive relationships? And in my experience, it was really the working environment that made it. It wasn't about, and I know some people will say it's about the money. For me, it wasn't about the money. It was about, being able to tell folks when they ask, well, how is it working at Channel Islands? And I say, well, it's great, because when I walk around, I get an all 5-finger wave, and we talk to folks, and they enjoy talking with us, and we have those relationships within the community. And it really is one step at a time. We just got to keep pushing forward, and work towards how do we improve the relationships, but also advocating for the officers and the equipment and the salaries and all of those things.
Thank you for that. Okay. How would you approach making an important operational change when stakeholders disagree? How would you communicate this change to both your department and the college community?
Well, I could spend a long time on that, but in the interest of 5 minutes, I'll just say that I've learned a lot about adaptive leadership over the years, starting in SLI, right? And sometimes being a leader, you don't lead in calm waters. Sometimes you're known for leading through the chop, right? And not all operational changes are always welcome, but sometimes based on budget, based on directive, they are what they are, and we have to do the best we can. And so for me, it's how do I support the team in that as best possible? How do I make sure that they have the tools they need to accomplish that change? Understanding that sometimes, we all have to work together to get through the difficulty. And that SLI would talk about turning on the heat and all these different terms. And it's about, for me, it's how do we get there? How do we bring everyone along and still accomplish the goal, but make sure that we have wins on both sides, right? And so are there compromises we can make? what other creative solutions can we come up with our campus partners to perhaps get there to where we need to be, but through our partnerships and other creative means, make it so that there's a win along the way as well, right?
Thank you. Please address how you would handle campus property issues, such as ongoing vandalism and misuse of campus grounds. Additionally, how would you ensure campus safety during after-hour operations when darkness and isolation present real security challenges?
Yeah, that's the other difference between municipal and higher ed law enforcement is that not only are we officers, but we have all of these facilities that we're responsible for, and that means things like foot patrols and security checks and making sure that our officers are visible out there in the field, right? Through deterrence, and then also prioritizing technology. I know the university and the colleges have surveillance programs on the books. Though a little controversial recently is some of the LPR systems to help combat, um, uh, I know that the colleges currently don't have officers on campus 24/7, right? They're there until late into the evening, and then there's a period of time at night when the campuses are closed, where no officers are available, but we have an on-call supervisor. And from Channel Islands, it really is working with our partner agencies, building those relationships so that we know that Ventura PD is going to keep an eye on Ventura College as they pass through the night, that Oxnard PD is going to do the same in Oxnard and the sheriff's office in Moore Park and Santa Paula out there at East Campus. But I think it's more than that. I think eventually it's building um, and making sure that the community knows about the reporting structure so that we can get the information, get out there. And like I said, you have to get on if that type of stuff quickly. Like, people have heard of broken windows theory. We don't want to allow that to get out of hand. And so how do we make sure that our officers are visible out there, but then also building those relationships with the community and with our partners to help us out. And especially important with Ventura College, as I know they're embarking upon student housing as a project, right? And I think that may usher some changes in the future. And I have an extensive experience working with our student housing and housing and residential education partners, how our officers interact with those teams to ensure safety overnight. And it's a unique difference between municipal policing in a city versus working with campus-owned housing facilities on campus.
Okay, well, that brings our interview to a conclusion. I have just one final question, and is there anything you would like to share about your qualifications or approach that we haven't covered in our previous questions?
Well, thank you, Andrew. Again, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to come and meet with you all today. I look forward to meeting many more of you, hopefully, as time goes on. For me, it's about family. It's about the community that we're with. I personally, I live in Santa Paula, and like I said, I'm born and raised here in county. I've got deep ties, not only because I attended Ventura College, but I went through the Ventura County Sheriff's Academy, which is at a campus-owned facility. But it was the old one at the time. But also the Oxnard College EMT program, right? Because at Channel Islands, all of our officers are EMTs, and so we go through that process as well. And I would just say that I think experience in educational policing is imperative for a chief of police at this stage. And you've got a wonderful team of officers and lieutenants. Interim Chief Pilato is doing a great job of moving things forward. And I have relationships with all of those folks already because of my time at Channel Islands on our capacity as their communication center and dispatch center. It offers a unique understanding of not only the way our officers interact across the district, but also the technology they're using, the radio systems they're using, the RIMS reporting software and that's being used, extensive knowledge in all of those things that I think would help set me apart from someone who doesn't have experience with higher ed. And again, for me, educational law enforcement is about, it's about not only fostering a safe environment for our students and our faculty and our staff on campuses, but also making sure that the department is part of the educational process. How can we help these young and non-traditional students learn that the police are here for them, right? And how, when we send them out into the world after they're leaving the university or the campus, that they let them know that they can trust law enforcement, right? And I think a university and a college department, that is of the utmost importance, that we are there to help them understand, yes, we do all of the traditional law enforcement things, but we are here to build those relationships. And I think that passes on as they leave our communities.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everyone for joining us this morning. And thank you to our candidate, Christopher Jayton.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back to everyone. Welcome back to our public audience, as well as those joining us online. We have our third candidate here for the position of Chief of Police. So welcome, Jerry Hernandez. Thank you for being here, and let's get started. Okay. The first question allows us to kind of learn a little bit about you. Please tell us how your educational background, experience, and qualifications have prepared you to serve as Chief of Police for the Ventura County Community College District.
Important. This question, experience. I think what's important. Okay, I'll do that. There you go. Okay. What's really important for me to explain to you here about leadership and experiences. I have a little over 29 years in law enforcement experience, and 13 of those years I was a captain with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. And before that, I was a supervisor throughout the department. And it's not about longevity, just being somewhere for 29 years. It's what you do and what kind of experience you've had. I had experience in virtually every facet of law enforcement as a captain, and I think I'll concentrate more on that. I was a patrol watch commander, which oversees the patrol function in the entire county, including contract cities, unincorporated areas. It's just a wide range of what you see, most people see on television, pursuits, homicides, assaults, all of those things I was responsible for. So that's one of the positions that I held that I'm proud of, because that required very quick decision-making abilities, and I have that. One of the other positions I had was the East County Patrol unincorporated area, which is the area around Thousand Oaks and Moore Park. And it's probably more like a city chief position because I had oversight of the patrol function in that area. I had oversight of the personnel, of the supervisors. I had oversight of the off-road detail, the detective unit that was out there, the investigations. I had the communities of Oak Park and Bell Canyon, and all of the resources that we committed to those areas, I was in charge of. I had oversight of the budget, and those were all important, and I think positions that demonstrate my leadership, because it was all about people. Those are all people working there, people that I supervised, that I mentored, and who I managed. I was the academy director for 4 years, which was a dynamic, awesome job to have. And I had the oversight of the basic academy, which most people look at as the recruits coming in, that they recognize recruits being yelled at, being put through a rigorous program, and then coming out at the end as police officers, at least ready to go out into training in their respective divisions or their agencies. I had oversight of that and the personnel and those highly trained and highly qualified people, again, that were in charge of that ran that daily. I was their leader there. I had oversight of the training bureau, which is post-mandated training, which means that every peace officer in the state of California has to abide by post standards, which are strict. And I had a team of people that I managed there, which was a very dynamic job also, to make sure that every officer in the tri-counties in the state and within our own department were trained and were up to date in their training. I had oversight of the firearms facility and the staff there. All of those positions, they had different people within the academy with different missions, different functions, and I managed them. And I'm proud to say I did that. I was the sheriff's adjutant, which I think I could best describe it as the sheriff's right-hand person, person that he trusted. He hand selected me to do that job. That's where I was brought into the highest level of the executive management. Um, he trusted me to speak for him, to make presentations in his name. He trusted me to talk to the community. I was also the public information officer while I had that position. I was the department spokesperson. So when I appeared in front of television, radio, and talked to all media, I spoke on behalf of the sheriff, and he trusted me to do that. I coordinated the budget presentation that we made to the board, the annual budget presentation made to the Board of Supervisors. So I had a very good understanding of an overall budget of a large agency, and I met with every leader of every part of the county law enforcement, the sheriff's office area, and presented that to the Board of Supervisors. I was a captain in both of our large jails, the Todd Road Jail, and the main jail. That also is a very dynamic environment. That has a mixture of sworn and non-sworn personnel. The responsibilities within jails are awesome. The liabilities within facilities like that are incredible. And managing people and accomplishing your tasks and your mission requires strong leadership for that, which I have. My education is, I have a master's degree in emergency services administration from Cal State Long Beach. That was all the study of all things disaster, preparedness, response, aftermath. I used that background while I was working with the Office of Emergency Services, and I worked with them on preparing for disasters and actual disasters that happened to us, mainly large fires that some of you are probably aware of, like the Zaka fire that was very destructive, and I spoke to the press and to the public during those events. I put out press releases to the public in response to those major incidents, and so all in wrapping that up, all of those experiences make me ideal for the position of a chief, somebody that has real experience in varied areas and has done pretty much or has managed pretty much everything that could happen in an environment that required law enforcement intervention.
Thank you. So speaking of leadership, what is your leadership philosophy? And can you provide a specific example of how you've demonstrated effective leadership?
My style, excuse my readers, but it's going to happen. My style is leading by example. There's no better way to do that. I hold myself to a high standard. I hold myself accountable. I expect to be held accountable for my job. The people that work for me expect to be held accountable. But I lead with positive reinforcement. I have the highest ethical standards, and I expect people to follow those. And I interact with the people that work for me. I communicate well, and I give clear expectations. And I reward people for the good that they do. I show people how good work and honest and ethical performance is really the only way to do this job, and to lead people and to make them believe that what you're doing is the right thing and the right way to do it. That translates to good morale. And when you have good morale within a department, you can accomplish anything. You have positive personnel working for you. good attitudes that translates down into the communities that we work for and the jobs that they do. So my style, lead by example, high ethical standards, motivate people, treat people well, reward them, recognize them. And I don't mean just sworn personnel. I mean support staff, everybody involved in the mission that we have as law enforcement leaders.
Thank you, Jerry. Ventura County Community College District values open and respectful communication and promotes inclusiveness and openness to differing viewpoints. How would you lead your department to embody these values, and how would you personally conduct yourself in alignment with them? Additionally, how would you lead and direct your team when you may not personally agree with board-approved policies and strategic goals?
Communication is key. You have to be communicating constantly with your community and the people that are involved in what your area of responsibility is. You have to identify who your community is and who their leaders are, or their spokespersons, or people that you think would be effective to help you accomplish your mission or to communicate within that community and that group. So communicating is key. And however way you do that, you can select people for meetings. I like to go out and talk to people. That's works for me. And that's what I would expect the people that work for me to do also. And I mean meaningful communication, not just doing it and saying hello and saying a couple of things. I mean making connections and building trust. That's how I would accomplish that part of it. I've had experience with times where you have to carry out a policy or change the way that you do business, and it's not popular, or you may not agree with it for whatever reason. But you have to trust your leadership. You have to trust that that's in fact the right thing to do, and you can air yourself out privately with the person that's giving you those directives. You can do that, but you shall not impart that disagreement. That's bad business down to your staff. That's just not good business. You have to show them why it is a good idea or why that policy was changed. You have to explain thoroughly. And then you leave it at that and you march forward and you get the job done. It does no good to demonstrate your own disagreement with a policy or action or whatever direction that you were given. It does no good to anybody. It brings, it lowers morale. It's just bad business. So I've had experience with that throughout my career. And then you find out later in some way that that was probably the best decision at the time. And so I have no problem with dealing with issues like that.
Okay, thank you. Given the current political climate and increased presence of federal immigration enforcement agencies, how would you respond to requests for assistance from ICE or other federal agencies on campus? Please address your understanding of applicable laws, district policy, and how you would balance legal compliance with fostering a safe and inclusive educational environment for our diverse student population, which includes undocumented and mixed status students.
The Ventura County Community College District is clear about their policies and their philosophies about inclusiveness and diversity. It's very clear that it is a safe and it is a protected environment for people of all backgrounds to be at. That's clear. You just need to look at their mission statement. You need to look at what they're doing operationally, how to help people that are undocumented or other hindrances to education. They're there to help. They're there to foster inclusiveness and diversity. That's what they do, and that's who they are. That's why I'm here, because my philosophies align exactly with the district's. I can tell you in law enforcement, there's a committee. It's called VCLEC. It's Ventura County Law Enforcement Coordinating Committee, and they recently put out a statement outlining how they're going to handle and what they feel about enforcing immigration laws. And the bottom line is that they have no interest in doing that. Over the almost 30 years in law enforcement that I was on, we never did that. And we won't do that. We won't enforce immigration laws unless it's mandated by the legislature. And there are specific areas that we might have to get involved. But currently, and what's happening now, no, absolutely not. I feel the same way. I feel like the public does. It goes against the grain. It goes against what law enforcement has been trying to do for decades, and that's build trust with the community. When I was out in Moore Park, I headed the Hispanic outreach program. Most of the audiences that I had were undocumented. We reached out to the community. It was a program that I piggybacked off of the California Highway Patrol that had a program called El Protector. I named mine Adelante, which we meant to move forward, to get ahead. I secured that grant. We started a program where we went out into the community. We gave presentations. We gave car seats to people. We had posters and stickers. I mean, we were all in. Why? Because and today I happen to know that the sheriff's department has the same philosophy, building trust with the community, going out to all communities, regardless of their background, regardless of their immigration status. And personally, I find it disturbing to see what's happening. And in terms of following the law, we will not enforce, at least in and around the college district interests, and I'll follow the lead of the current enforcement leaders.
Thank you, Jerry. How do you plan to protect students' First Amendment rights, including peaceful assembly and protest, while ensuring campus safety and policy compliance?
Oh, I think you said it. It's having good policies in place, number one. It's anticipating what kind of potential protests we could have. It's not hard to look around and see what kind of protests are occurring. So good policy, good staffing, good training will ensure that we allow the students to express their First Amendment rights. That's a no-brainer, but that we make sure that we proactively anticipate where something could go wrong and how we would act to protect the students. And I'm talking about anti-protesters, and I'm talking about people that come from backgrounds where they want to create a disturbance, where they make it unpeaceful or not peaceful. And so having good policies, having good training, having the right people in place, having a clear understanding of and following the district's policies. I believe they have, when, where, and how protests are to be done, that it's not disturbing the normal flow of instruction. We'll work with the district on that, and as the chief, potential chief, that's one of the first things that I would look at. It's that important to me, because there's a potential for that to occur in any of the colleges that we have, Oxnard, Moore Park, Ventura, or even in the satellite office down in Santa Paula. I mean, it could happen anywhere. So that's how I would deal with that.
Okay, thank you. Can you describe a time when you had to respond to a critical incident? What went well? What could have been done better? And what did you learn?
Well, one of my many duties in law enforcement, one of the positions that I had was internal affairs investigators, and I became a use of force expert in that capacity. I was given those uh, high risk, high media coverage type of events. Those were my assignments. One of them was investigating officer involved shootings, and I mean where people are shot and killed. I did some of those, um, and I responded to homicides, those kinds of events. And what I learned from managing those let me back up a little bit. There was one other critical incident where two of our officers were involved in a use of force up in Ojai. And the person they were trying to restrain, who was severely injured at a large party, they ended up using force on him to try to take him into custody. They had no idea what actually had transpired. It turns out that somebody else hit this person about the head with a heavy instrument, and ultimately he died. The sheriff's department was sued by the family, alleging that the deputies used force that might have contributed to his death. So that's how high level of incidents that I'm experienced in. But what I learned from each of these and many other critical incidents and was how important training and policies were. And one of my other responsibilities was to make recommendations for policy change, how we respond to those critical incidents, how we apply use of force, how we report on it. So there's a lot that I was able to glean from that. Some of these recommendations I made were actually implemented and changed. And so as a police chief, I have that background. I have that ability to look at a critical incident, to know how to manage it, to know how to direct people to the right place, and then how to evaluate it so that we know that we responded to it correctly in the first place and how we would respond to it after.
Thank you for that. How do you envision your role as chief of police in serving and supporting our students across all three colleges? How will you stay informed about student needs and concerns, and how would you work to build and maintain strong relationships with faculty, classified staff, college administrators, and the broader community?
I have to go back to communication, and I mean meaningful communication. I mean reaching out. I like to use the term, everybody comes to the table, and that means that we come together and make decisions together, or we offer ideas that can solve anybody's issue, or we'll take the table to you. And that's the part that I think is important. We need to interact with the students, the faculty, and anybody involved in the area of our responsibility. You cannot manage, lead a group of people from your chair and hope that they're doing what they're supposed to do to further your mission, which is to protect the community and treat people with respect and dignity. You can't do that from an office. You just can't do it. So again, I would promote good communication. I said this earlier, that you have to have practices in place where people can meet with you, or you can meet with them, where you can discuss issues, where you can implement policies to better enforce or protect people. So I'll have to fall back on that. And after hearing that question, it's just easy for me because I've done that. I've reached out. I've showed people how to do that. I've led people to communicate better and to bring in people from areas that wasn't the norm, because everybody can contribute at the table.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our department faces low staffing levels and recruitment retention challenges. Given these challenges, how will you foster positive morale and use your experience to move the department forward?
Well, I know that is the retention and recruitment is a problem for every law enforcement agency in the state and probably the country. And there's a small pool of people that we draw from, people that will meet the standard. That's just the way it is. I was the academy director for 4 years. I know how hard it was for agencies to bring in recruits, for them to be trained. I know how important it was for the sheriff's department to stay in communication with those chiefs to help them understand that their recruits may or may not make it. Why? Because they needed personnel, but qualified personnel. And so I know what that's like. I also know what it's like to have budgets impact your staffing levels. I know what it's, I have experience where I had to lead people mostly in the jails where overtime and staffing was reduced and you had to do the job with less people and it made the job harder. Those just the facts of life. That's what you had to do. We didn't have any control of that. It just happened. All you can do is be honest with people, communicate with people why the job suddenly is going to be a little bit harder. But again, I have to go back to positive reinforcement, leading by example, always staying positive, always listening to your staff and on how to do it better. And with that, I've had success. I had very few people that were not on board. Most people understand our predicament. Most people will respond positively. They've been brought up in the agency or the department, and they trust you. And so I build trust with my subordinates, and they believe me when I tell them we can get this job, and I do it very positively, and the outcomes are good.
Okay. How would you approach making an important operational change when stakeholders disagree? How would you communicate this change to both your department and the college community?
I think I understand, Andrew. I'm sorry. I think I understand it. I'm going to read it a little bit more. Well, I have experience with making operational changes and the stakeholders don't agree. The one example I think that I'm going to tell you has more to do with the stakeholders that were involved within my agency or within the police academy. One of the changes that I had to implement was reducing the length of the basic academy and then eliminating some of the optional training that we were providing to the recruits. The Ventura County Criminal Justice Training Center has a fantastic reputation. It's one of the few high stress academies in the state, and law enforcement agencies appreciate that their recruits are going to be trained very well. Probably the top recruits in the state. Outstanding reputation, and so we were proud of how we were running that academy, specifically the TAC officers and those that were supervising those functions. They were very proud of what they were doing. But in doing so, we had a high attrition rate. And a high attrition rate means that agencies are not getting their recruits. And so the department moved to be more in line with the averages of the rest of the state. In other words, how can we improve the attrition rate? How, what kind of philosophy changes can we make so that we can get more recruits out into the agencies? And so I physically went into the curriculums and the scheduling and the operations and made changes, removed certain tasks that we were giving to the recruits that basically created a high degree of stress. For instance, you may not know this, but recruits are not only required to study constantly and to pass rigorous written tests, they have to write, in essence, essays on their performance throughout the day. In other words, if somebody dropped a pen, then that person could receive an essay on taking care of your equipment, and that could have been your sidearm or your baton, that kind of thing. And it was used to create a stress level on top of what they were already required to do. Well, overall, the philosophy was let's allow the agencies and allow those people that are taking them out into field training to gauge whether they can deal with stress levels, and let's lessen that abilities or those tasks and within the academy, and so that we can improve, that we can get a realistic look of how people actually react under stress in the police environment. That didn't go over well with my staff, the TAC officers who were used to that, who were, for lack of a better term, creating stress so that they could weed who they thought those people out of the program. And it took me a long time to get through to them, and most people eventually came around and saw that we were producing a quality recruit out into the streets and to their respective areas, that some of that stress inducing tactics were not necessary. They did get that. One person requested a transfer at the end of that cycle, and we replaced them with somebody that had a better understanding of what we were trying to do. So conflict in that respect, I have experience with. And again, if that involves the district, then again, communication and constant communication, information exchange, so that nobody is surprised about what we're doing or why we're doing it in such a way.
Okay, thank you. Please address how you would handle campus property issues, such as ongoing vandalism and misuse of campus grounds. Additionally, how would you ensure campus safety during after-hour operations when darkness and isolation present real security challenges?
Well, I'm sensitive to that too. My wife was a crime analyst for the sheriff's department for years, and she worked in the Major Crimes Bureau in the homicide unit. That wasn't her normal job. That was an anomaly, but she did have background in crime analysis, and so what that is gathering information, making it accessible and visible for leaders to see in real time where crime is occurring and at what time it's occurring and who is doing it. And with those techniques, it's improved law enforcement significantly over the years. That wasn't the way it was in the early days. We just kind of went out and winged it. You kind of responded to this area and hope that you're hitting the right places, that kind of thing, with regard to crime when we're reacting to crime. So implementing crime analysis strategies is one thing, but another thing, and a very effective way to do it, is technology. technology, cameras, sensors, uh, that helps us a lot. And we can do more with less staffing. Ventura PD, police department, uses a lot of the camera technology in a lot of their places because, to be honest, you can't put officers everywhere. You just can't do it. A lot of the major agencies are using technology. Drones is a big usage today for that reason. But I would implement technology. I would utilize crime statistics, and then I would increase patrol and staffing in those areas. Just go back to old school and go where we think crime is occurring. I think a combination of those things will handle those matters.
Okay, Jerry, that concludes our interview. Is there anything you would like to share about your qualifications or approach that we haven't covered in our previous questions?
I just want to stress, number one, my varied experience. That goes a long way for a chief. That helps you to do your job. It helps you to recognize potential outcomes of what's happening in your area. It really does. I also want to talk about familiarity. I'm from this area. I'm from Santa Paula. I know the communities of Oxnard and Ventura, and I've been assigned to every area of the county. The sheriff's department gave me a very good example of how effective it is to connect with every area of the community, and I'm already there. I went to Ventura College. I was a brand new student there. I'm familiar with the community. I know what it's like, and I know what it's like to have a relationship with law enforcement growing up in the area. I know what people in underserved areas feel like and what they're missing out on, and I know the value of connecting with our community. And I look at the college district campuses as our community, and I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with the law enforcement professionals. I'm familiar with the sheriff's department. I'm familiar with the city that they contract with, and I'm prepared to network immediately with members of all of the areas in law enforcement, and that'll help me to meet my goals. So those two things, experience and familiarity. And then lastly, when I saw this position open up, I was excited because personally, I think I would be a good fit there. I think that I'm the right person. I think that you wouldn't have to worry about whether I connect with people or whether I connect with my employees or whether I get the job done. You don't have to worry about that. My passion is there. I love the job, and I'll make a good chief for you. I will.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Thank you for being here today. I would like to thank our public audience as well as our online audience for joining us at our Ventura County Community College District Chief of Police Public Forum. Have a good day.